Hey there guys, we're taking a look at Red Dead Redemption 2 running on the AMD Ryzen 5 5500U, this time with 8 GB of RAM. We've only taken a look at the game when it comes to the online section of it because I had actually bought the online only a while back because it was on sale I think for like 10 bucks. But a friend recently gifted me the actual full game and well that actually let me test it out, and the game actually does have a built-in benchmark that you can access if you have the single player. And here you can see running at the full 1080p resolution, though we are using FSR 2.0 at the performance preset, so we're running well under 1080p here. Now if you've been watching any of the other videos and have been keeping track, FSR 2.0 does have a bit of a performance overhead when it comes to these low-end systems like this. So what that means overall is the fact that the level of performance that we actually get out of this is not as good as if we had just straight up dropped the resolution to whatever it is that FSR is actually setting the resolution to. So there's a little bit of performance impact there. That doesn't mean that you're going to get lower FPS with FSR than you would if you were just playing at native. That's not how that works. It just means that FSR 2.0 does take a little bit of performance off the top just because it actually has to process more to actually give you the better looking result than just using a more generic upscaler. Keep in mind though, while looking at these benchmark results, completely ignore the averages. Averages do not matter in this at all because of the fact that the built-in benchmark has a lot of black scenes in it, which means nothing's being rendered on there and the FPS will go up into the hundreds. That's going to skew the averages, so just pay attention to only the frame times and the FPS that you're seeing on screen. You'll see every time there's a black screen that the averages will start to climb up. It's just inherently a flaw in the design of it because, of course, the benchmark wasn't exactly designed for measuring things like averages and 1% lows. In general, I kind of just hate benchmarks that only give you your average, your FPS minimum, and your maximum, because minimum and maximum are useless pieces of information. They don't tell you anything about the game. 1% lows are really the most important, and frame times are also pretty much the most important. But you can see in the scenes where there's actually gameplay happening that the level of performance that we're getting is pretty abysmal here, even with FSR 2.0 running. We're talking about FPS in the 20s, and on occasion even remotely getting close to 30 is pretty much such a rare occurrence that you should just never expect it to happen. With, of course, 1% lows that kind of just drag down the whole experience in general. You'll see that the frame times are pretty brutal in the sense that the latency that we're at is ridiculous. Even if it is somewhat consistent, there is just a lot of moments of stutter that overall drag down the whole experience. And again, completely ignore the averages that you see there. Only pay attention to the frame times and the FPS. But we can drop things down to 720p with also FSR still set to performance mode to see if that actually gives us an uplift. And you'll see that doing that really doesn't net us much of a gain at all. The level of performance that we're getting is pretty brutal, and now the visual quality of the game has taken a major hit. In general, you're really not going to be able to get much out of this. Your averages are still going to struggle to stay above 30. They're going to occasionally touch it here and there, more frequently than at the full 1080p resolution. But in general, it is just a overall rough experience, and I would really just recommend that if you're on a system that you can't raise the TDP on and you're stuck at 15 watts, to just not even really attempt to play the game like this. And even if you have a system that can actually set a higher TDP, I'll show you what that actually ends up doing. You might just be better off waiting until you have a bit more of a powerful system, because with such a story focused game that is super cinematic, having some lower quality graphics and barely getting anything remotely playable is not exactly going to be the greatest experience ever. But in general, what we're looking at in terms of FPS in most scenes is going to be just struggling to stay above 30 in any meaningful scenes. Obviously, there will be scenarios where things are a little bit more open and barren, where your FPS might start to climb up, but as soon as anything meaningful starts to happen, that's when everything falls apart. So at least our 1% lows did see a bump where it isn't dropping as dramatically as it was at the full 1080p resolution. Now, if we just switch over to raising the TDP up to 25 watts and go back to the 1080p resolution, you can see here that the level of performance that we're getting is nothing remarkable. Our 1% lows certainly saw an uplift. We aren't getting as major stutters as we were before, but a consistent 22 FPS is still not going to be enough to really make a meaningful difference in terms of making this that much of a playable experience. So this is what I mean in the sense that it would be probably a better move to wait and just see if you can get a better system later down the line and actually play this game. For a single player game this good, waiting a couple of years is really not going to do anything. The single player is still going to be there. The story is going to still be exactly the same, and you're going to be on a system that can actually play it at a better level of performance than what we're getting here. And dropping things down to 720p with, of course, FSR 2.0 still running at performance mode does see our FPS get a nice little boost where now it's around the 40 FPS range in a lot of scenes, but really it's more around the 30s range, and it's doable, but you're still sacrificing a lot of your visual. FSR 2.0 already at the performance preset isn't exactly the nicest looking thing, and at a lower resolution than the native display at 720p, and then using FSR performance mode on top of that really drags down the whole visual quality of the game. Our 1% lows being in the mid-20s also isn't great, but it could be worse. And in general, I would just say that we're teetering on the edge of a playable experience, and we can actually jump into the single player itself to see what that is like. And jumping into the beginning of the actual campaign here, you can see that the level of performance that we're getting is half decent in the sense that, I mean, we are at 1% lows that are pretty low since that it's in the low 20s, but our averages are at least above 30, though not by much at all. We are pretty much capped out in terms of how much RAM we're utilizing here. 8 gigabytes RAM might end up being a major limiting factor here, and we'll have to see later on if 16 gigabytes can actually alleviate the experience here a bit and push us toward a more playable experience. But visually speaking, the game does look very rough. Hooked up to a 24-inch 1080p 144Hz monitor made this look visually brutal, and the built-in display, just from the benefit of being smaller, did look a bit better. But in general, I feel like it takes too much away from the overall gaming experience. But I can completely understand if you just really want to play this game and you're willing to tough it out like that. I mean, when I was growing up, I was playing games like Star Wars Battlefront, the original Star Wars Battlefront, on PC at just 15 frames per second, and I was having an absolute blast. So if I could find an ancient game like that enjoyable to play as a child at an FPS that is pretty much half of this, then I'm sure you can come to really enjoy playing this with these settings, especially because it really seems like people can adjust to practically anything. But I will say that there is just so much other stuff you can play on the system that will give you good FPS and good visual quality that I feel like ruining the overall gorgeous artistic design of this game just so that you can play it on a low-end system doesn't really seem worth it. The gaming industry has changed dramatically from when I was a kid, where, you know, you bought a game and that's kind of just all you could really do with it, just own it and play it and hope that you actually enjoy it. Nowadays, with so many free-to-play games, Steam sales, and just sales in general for games bringing prices down to dramatically low levels, I feel like there is enough variety out there that you don't have to subject yourself to playing at such a low visual quality. But really, that all comes down to your own personal preference. As you can see, if you go with the most aggressive settings, then yes, you can get a decent enough FPS, but I don't know if it's going to be worth it for you. But anyways, I hope you found this quick little look at the game interesting. I am planning on continuing to play this, potentially on my personal system. I say potentially just because of the fact that I am considering doing a video where I switch over to a me PC for my gaming system, and really just in general my own personal system, for about a month and see what that experience is like. I'm thinking of doing that with the B-Link SER5. I've really been enjoying messing around with that mini PC, so it would be kind of interesting to see what would happen if I made it my everyday machine, including making YouTube videos and everything else I do on it. So if you like the idea of that, be sure to subscribe, and also let me know down below what you would like to see in terms of that video. Like, what would you like to just see a weekly updates to see how I'm doing, or just like a full-on full month video on it? Let me know down below what you think. But anyways, I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.